I'm the youngest of four, technically three, hermanos. There's me, my older biological hermano, Eric. He's 6 years older than me. My older half-sister, Tanya. She's 24 years older than me. He's the eldest one. My half-brother, Donald Edward, or Donald Jr. Era 28 years older than me. He was named after our papi. Donald y Tanya had their mama. Eric y yo had our ama. But we all share the same papi. I grew up living under the same roof as Eric. Tanya would only ever see during vacaciones de escuela, whenever I would visit my familia in Puerto Rico and Florida. But Donald I only ever saw via pictures and heard via stories told by my older relatives. Hay una razón por eso. He falleció at age 30 when I was 2 years old. We never met. He knew I existed. He knew he had a younger hermana, pero we never physically met. So I grew up with a brother where I only ever saw in photographs and heard about via family members. Y eventualmente tenía un mental image in my head of who this man was. Pero it was formed via second-hand accounts o cuentos de mi familia y the family pictures I would see up on the mantle in la casa de mi titi. I always pictured him as a tall man, like 6 foot or 5'9". He wasn't flaco or too gordo. Era average, pero his chest is always puffed out like papi's. His cara is round and long. His eyes are dark brown, casi negros, y tienen un mischievous knowing look. Like he knows an embarrassing secret of yours, or you share an inside joke only the two of you know about. Pero he's always smiling. He used to smile, it's small and it's kind. He's clean shaven, pero he has some thick eyebrows. He's trigueño. That's how I always picture him. He was the darkest of our siblings. You can thank nuestros genéticos caribeños for that one. Su pelo is black, pero I don't know if it was straight or rizado, pero in my head, it always looks curly and gelled. Y se vistió como papi. Whenever I think of him, siempre tiene su polo amarillo pastel with short sleeves, pantalones grises, y un pair de loafers. Sin calcetines. As much as a sin that is. It stands to reason that if yo, Rick y Tanya ended up with Dad's hairy genes, it only makes sense que él también era bien hairy. We all inherited that from papi. It's the only logical answer. And that's the image I have in my head of him. Whenever I think of him or try to imagine him, that's how he appears. I never heard him speak, pero whenever I imagined him talking, whenever my mind had to make up what his voice sounded like, I'd imagine que cuando hablaba español, que it sounded like a mixture del acento de mis primos. Maybe un acento boricua, maybe un poco el acento ecuatoriano o de cualquier país de Latinoamérica. I know he and my sister grew up moving around South America. He's never speaking English in my imagination. Maybe Spanglish, few English words there, pero nunca puro inglés. But I know he grew up speaking English. He went to English-speaking schools. He spent time in America. So if I had to think of him while speaking English, I'd imagine que su acento era nondescript, typical American accent, like Tanya's. Pero despite the fact that I never met him and only ever saw him via pictures, my family's the one responsible for keeping his memory alive. I learned about them via sus cuentos, sus memorias de él. Y cuando yo no estaba en Puerto Rico o en Florida, cuando yo estaba en casa, I usually relied on papi, ama, or Tanya to answer any questions I had about him.
¿Qué te puedo decir de Donald Jr.? He was always standing up, straight up. He was average height, about 5'7". He wasn't chubby, he wasn't skinny, he was muscular, and he was trigueño. Don't remember any scars or birthmark that I can remember. He might have some, but I don't remember. And he was hairy, lots of hair. That was his major complaint, especially his legs. And I guess that runs into the family. We all the same. He has a round face, not a big or small nose, kind of a round nose. Never had a beard that I know. He was always smiling. No freckles, no moles that I can remember, birthmark, or any other mark on his body. And he had big eyebrows. They were thick and dark. He had black hair, curly, and only when he was about 7 or 8 years old, he had long hair. After that, what I remember is he was always having short hair, and he combed his hair straight back always, and short. Had big eyes, dark brown or brown, yes, dark brown or black. Thick eyelashes, and no wrinkles in his face or anything like that. He used to dress very casual. He was always wearing, when he was not working in the office, he was casual, like I said. He likes to wear shorts during the summer, jeans or khakis during the winter, and always wear loafers or tennis shoes. And during the summer, he rarely wears socks. Never saw him wearing any accessories like wristwatches or rings or any other than his wedding ring. He had no. He was never loud. He was normal voice, and I can remember always saying his favorite phrase from when he was a teenager. He used to say, "Oh man," and so he was always saying, "Oh man," like I said, and he was not, like I said, he was never loud. He did have an accent in his Spanish, but in English he was his native language, so heavy accent in the Spanish. And one memorable thing that I remember about him saying is a short story. After he moved to college and he moved to live by himself, I remember him telling me this story. He went to the grocery store to get some groceries, and he went to pay. The cashier asked him whether he wanted plastic or paper, and at the time he said, "No, I'm paying cash," not realizing that she was referring not to credit card or bills, but she was referring to paper bags or plastic bags. So that's something I always remember of him telling me that short story.
¿Qué te puedo decir de Donald? Siempre estaba parado muy derechito, muy consciente de su postura y de su apariencia. Eso es indiscutible. Siempre andaba bien portado, bien parado, bien peinado. Eso sí, siempre muy derechito. No sé por qué. Y yo creo que era como de tu altura, me imagino, un poco más alto que tu papá, for sure. Y era flaco, pero flaco musculoso, como luego decimos. Porque tenía esa facilidad de que le era muy fácil mantenerse en forma. Y era moreno, Eh, yo creo que como Eduardo, o si pudiese comparar algo así como que si fuera el punto medio entre Eduardo y Juancho. Eh, Cicatrices tenía un montón por todos lados porque nunca fue de los que se estuvo quietecito, tranquilito, entonces siempre había oportunidad de un rasguño, una caída. Cuando se rompió el pie, lo operaron y pues quedó con cicatrices en el tobillo. Y creo que tenía una cicatriz en la cara o en la frente, pero to be honest, no me recuerdo. Eh, no me acuerdo que tuviera any birthmarks, pero... Y Harry eh, tenía el cabello trigueño cerrado. Y pues Harry, el Harry de los Font, pero de cabello chiquito, rizado. Su cara era cuadrada, era, I guess I would say sharp features, porque estaba bien delineada, pero cuadrada. La barba así muy bonita, con la nariz chiquita de los Font, eso es indiscutible. Nunca lo vi con barba, aunque alguna vez quiso tener goatee, pero, pero nunca fue así, like full blown beard. Y siempre estaba sonriendo. Donald tenía unos ojos tan bonitos que aunque estuviera serio, siempre estaba sonriendo con la mirada, como le decía yo. No tenía freckles o moles or anything like that. Tenía una piel muy smooth, muy suave. Y sus cejas eran más o menos como las tuyas, así perfectamente bien formadas, very neatly delineated, negras, espesas, pero de frame delgado. Y también igual que tú, igual que los Font, tenían los labios flaquitos, delgaditos, pero también bien formados. Su cabello negro, rizado, chiquito, siempre lo traía corto, andaba siempre bien con un ¿cómo se dice? Con el cabello corto. Y pues con el cabello rizado no tenía que hacerle nada, simplemente se le quedaba, it would stay in place. Los ojos eran pequeños, negros, eh, medio, un poco ovalados, pero pequeños en el buen proporción, una buena proporción con el resto de su cara. Y thick black eyelashes y nunca le vi eye bags o wrinkles a menos que se hubiese quedado en la fiesta mucho tiempo. Siempre andaba bien vestidito, siempre le gustaba verse bien porque sabía que era un chico guapo y como todo buen puertorriqueño siempre estaba preocupado de verse bien y siempre que pienso en él me acuerdo de él en sus loafers, leather loafers, sus jeans y un t-shirt, pero de calidad, así de tela suavecita. Y eso, así es como le gustaba andar fuera de cuando ya lo vi que empezaba a trabajar. Lo que más recuerdo es que cuando yo lo conocí en México en sus años de high school y pues son los años donde uno más empieza a desarrollar personalidades y demás y siempre me atacaba de la risa porque se apegó mucho al güey mexicano. Entonces a mí a cada rato me decía, órale güey, y cosas así por el estilo, nada más por molestar. Como decía que yo era muy mexicana, nunca me dijo reina, siempre me llamaba Chabela o Chabela Patriota. Y eso es lo que más me decía. Y cada que me quería hablar, como se volvió como todo buen mexicano, era, oye, güey, y cosas así por el estilo. He was loud a little bit, pero always in a happy mode. Pero siempre él solito reparaba el volumen. Y su acento era muy poco como el de tu papá, porque toda su vida también creció overseas. Bueno, no toda su vida, pero muchísimos años creció overseas, entonces no tenía el acento puertorriqueño así bien marcado. Y y su tono de voz era suave, era grave, un poco más grave que el de tu papá. Y no creo que pudiera yo imitar su voz, pero um, la recuerdo muy bien, simplemente diciéndome Chabela y cosas por el estilo.
How Donald held himself, I would say he held himself in a pretty confident way, but not with any cockiness to it. I think he was like confident, but yet friendly and approachable. That's what I would say when I think about how he held himself. I would say that Donald had a normal posture, so it wasn't overextended and he didn't slouch either. It was like a normal posture and with a chill kind of posture, if that makes any sense. Was he tall or short? That's a funny question. I always thought that he was short, but Donald always thought that he was tall, just because most of our family has the genes of being short, but he was a little bit taller than everyone else. He thought in his mind that he was actually tall, but realistically, I think he was short. I don't think he was tall or average, if I would say that. It was a funny question because he argued that all the time, by the way. He really thought that he was tall. He wasn't that tall. He was average. So skinny, not, I mean, when you say skinny, he wasn't skinny. I would say that he was just a little like average. As far as muscular goes, he wasn't overly muscular, but he had, I remember his upper body, like his arms and kind of like his chest and his shoulder area being a bit toned, because I mean, he did try to work out in that sense. So it wasn't overly muscular. It's just like he had toned arms. I remember having toned arms and like a toned shoulder and like, yeah, you could see that from that aspect. And like I said, as far as skinny or chubby, he was skinny, but he did have chubby cheeks. I will say that, but that was all genes. I would say it was like borderline moreno, but he was really trigueño, because if you think about it, like that Indian Taino color, that's very, very dark. I would say that that's how Donald was. He had this scar. Unfortunately, I can't remember which knee it was on, but he had about, I would say, like a 4-inch scar on his knee. Very similar, I would say, to Eric's scar. I don't remember how he got that scar. I know that when I was little, I remember him coming home one day that I think he was running or playing or something outside, and he cut himself on his knee. And I just remember that day they took him to the hospital and he had to get stitches. So I would say, as far as scars, that was pretty much the gnarliest scar that he probably had his entire body. And actually, now that I think about it, he did have, you couldn't tell very much because I think it healed very nicely, but if you looked at him close enough, he had some scars, a scar for quite some time. It took a while to heal. He fell off his three-wheeler once and he ended up scraping the entire side of his face, so he kind of had that in raw skin for a really long time. So you couldn't see that scar there anymore, but it took years for it to really kind of like heal in his skin completely. But a scar that he definitely had that you could still see till the day he passed was the one that he had on his knee. Honestly, I can't remember him having any birthmarks, and that's probably a good thing, because I would probably be getting too up close and personal with my brother. And I think too, it's just the fact that he had such, you know, dark skin that it would have been kind of hard for me to tell that he had a birthmark. And he didn't brag about having a special birthmark, because he usually sometimes would brag about special things that he had. So I'm sure he had maybe something, but I can't think of any that come to mind. Was he hairy? My God, yes, he was. Unfortunately, in our genes, we have some hairy family. We have a very hairy family. So yes, he was very hairy, and especially in his legs. He had I remember once we were all teenagers and we all went to like this beach house once, and we were all waiting to use this bathroom. There was like a group of, I don't know, like 8 of us, and there was one bathroom, and we were at the beach house, and he was taking forever, and I was like, Donald, come on, hurry up. And all of a sudden we hear the blow dryer. He doesn't have long hair. Like, what do you need the blow dryer for? So we were like, what are you doing? And he said, he's like, I'm blow drying my hair on my legs. And we were all like, what? Oh my gosh. But just to kind of put into perspective a little bit of how hairy his legs were. Was his face round, skinny, or sharp? I would say round for sure. We had chubby cheeks. For sure he had a small nose. He definitely took that off from the side of my mom's side of the family. We all have a small nose, so he had a small nose. I never saw him with a beard, so no. He might have maybe once gone through that phase, and he might have, but no. For the most part, I think for most of his life, I never saw him with a beard or a mustache. I would say he was, if I had to pick one between frowning and smiling, definitely smiling. We definitely had thick eyebrows. That was definitely a thing that was in our family, but they were nice eyebrows. Thick. His hair was black, very dark. Was it straight or curly? I would say neither, actually. I would say like wavy. He had very thick hair, and so it was wavy. Short. He always kept his hair pretty clean cut short. Although I will say when he was like, oh, well, how old was I? When he was, this is in Honduras, I think he was probably like 10, maybe. I don't know what they were doing in that time in life, but it was the thing to let your hair grow out. He didn't have straight hair, and he didn't have quite the curly hair. So he decided to not cut his hair for the longest time, and I don't know why Dad and Mom let him. But it almost looked like he had like a fro, like your typical Puerto Rican fro, if you think about it, from like back in the, like in the 80s. That's what he had going on. But then, oh, I think I remember now. He was going through like this skater phase. That's what it was. He was trying to be like a skater. But anyways, long story short, he ended up cutting his hair back to like a clean cut. So for the most part, he's always had his hair short, but I wanted to share that. He usually just used gel. Like I said, he normally always had like the clean cut fade, kind of typical Puerto Rican guy look. Short, clean cut, and he just styled it with gel, and he would just kind of slick it back, if I remember. Not that the top was like super long to be slicked back, but I just remember just kind of like keeping it nice and neat. If that makes any sense. Eyes, were they big or small? I would say small or average too small. And I say that because sometimes he kind of had like this, like when he smiled, he kind of squinted like this. So it kind of gave off that perception that he had small eyes. But they weren't small. But there was times, I guess, with certain facial expressions or when he laughed, it kind of looked like they were small. Did they slant or droop down? You know, if I had to pick one, I would say they drooped down, but very little bit, not much. They were very dark brown, almost black actually. He had really dark brown eyes, and like I said, they were almost black. He had thick eyelashes, almost looked like he had mascara on, natural mascara on. I would say that he had slightly eye bags, but no wrinkles. Our genes are too good to have wrinkles. When you think of Donald in your mind, what is he wearing? Jeans, for sure. Either a regular t-shirt, probably from like Banana Republic or Gap, or a polo shirt, a polo shirt. And as far as shoes, what do you call those shoes? He always had these brown shoes that he would wear with no socks. They were like the Sperry kind of brand, like your typical classic Sperry's. He had some brown ones. So it was all about the jeans, either the polo shirt or the t-shirt, but those Sperry shoes, no socks, for sure. And the jeans, they were kind of like washed out, kind of old. Yeah. He's pretty simple. He didn't, I don't think I even remember him wearing like a watch all the time or anything typical like that. He was pretty simple. If I had to say accessories, he had his glasses. And it was probably because he couldn't see, but it went well with him. So I would say that it was an accessory for him. Achomano. That's obviously it's a Spanish phrase. Pero he would always be like, Achomano, and I can even still hear his voice even saying that. Mommy. And not mommy as like at least living at home. It was always like, mommy, mommy, mommy. So, and we actually do have a joke too, with our uncles. I guess every time he would go to Puerto Rico, in his youth time, like he would always, for some reason, con tío Rafi, siempre era tío, 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 tío. So as we all grew up, it was always a joke, and we'd always make fun of him, and all of our cousins would make fun of Donald. We were like, tío, 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 tío. So he was always saying tío. He was always calling our uncle. So that kind of became a joke. He wasn't loud. I would say that he had a pretty like even tone voice for the most part. Can he get loud? Yes, when he needed to, but he wasn't loud. Did he have an accent? Yes, he so when he spoke in English, he just spoke average, normal. He didn't have like a southern accent, or you wouldn't even hear that he would have a Spanish accent. He actually spoke really good English. However, his Spanish, just like it happens to me, when he was around Spanish friends that were from different countries, like if he was around a Mexican, then he would be speaking in Spanish with the Mexican accent and like tone. But then all of a sudden, the next day, he could be hanging around with like a Puerto Rican friend, and they're speaking in Spanish, and the next thing you know, he's speaking Spanish, and he was speaking in the Puerto Rican accent, with the Puerto Rican tone. And I don't know if, honestly, if it was because we grew up in South America and we grew up in different places, and we just kind of got accustomed in our mind to hearing predominantly those different accents that people had in Spanish. It was very easy for him, just like it is for me, to just transition to it without even thinking about it. It just came out naturally. So in Spanish, he had accents with different types of Spanish, if that makes sense. In English, he had his normal English accent. You couldn't even hear that he had like a Spanish accent. I can't imitate his voice. The only thing I could do is pretty much just try to copy how he would say that phrase, like "Acho mano, wacho brother." That's all I would be able to do. But I can't. A quick short story that is very memorable for me, was we were in Puerto Rico, and I think I was probably about 15 or 16 years old. Him and I are about 5 years apart. He was dating Chiqui. And we went somewhere, what they would call La Charca, which was somewhere in the mountains, to like where there was like a river and a waterfall and all that kind of stuff. And it was a group of us. There was some of us cousins there, and I remember I was there, and his girlfriend was there. And there was times where we would or when we got to this river, whatever it was called, La Charca, you would have to swim across the way, and you'd have to climb the mountain, and then you would dive and you would throw yourself into the water. It was pretty dangerous. It's pretty risky. But the only people that were doing that, the group of people that were there and arriving, there were only guys that were doing it. But I've always been kind of like adventurous and a daredevil. And so I remember telling Donald, I was like, hey, I can't, it's like, I want to go over there. It's like, can I do it? I said, will you let me? And he was like, He's like, heck yeah. He's like, go over there. He's like, oh, that's cool. So I swam across the waves and I climbed the mountain. And I was like the only girl that was doing it. And I remember when I dived in and I jumped in, like as I'm in the water and as I'm coming out of the water, I remember hearing everybody kind of like clapping, like I guess being like the first girl or the only girl that did it. But I remember hearing my brother screaming, saying, "Esa es mi hermana!" Like he was so proud of, he had a proud sister moment. And for me, that meant the world. Because him and I, as we grew up, we would argue a lot sometimes, I think as most siblings do sometimes. But it took a really long time for us to grow up and mature in our sibling relationship, I guess you would say. But that moment, I carry that with me very dear in my heart, because he had a very proud moment of his sister. And it made me think, I'm like, man, he's always giving me crap, but he actually is really proud of me. So that was probably one of my most memorable moments that I love sharing with people.
So I know cómo se veía and what his personality was like in theory. I felt sad que se falleció. Well, sad for my family to see them so affected by it. Pero for all I heard of him and for all I've seen of him, I could never make a conexión in my head que era una persona, that he was a living, breathing person. Existió in the same headspace as fictional characters en mi mente. Tengo una idea as to what he was like, pero it was fuzzy around the edges, not quite solid. He existed as a abstract thought of a man in my head, a silent image that didn't move, just stood there, smiling and standing. Then we found the tapes. Over el verano, Papi found some old VHS tapes. One de made la boda de Donald in 1999, so I wasn't born yet. Y pues, por curiosidad, I sat down with him to watch them. Y por la primera vez en mi vida, I heard his voice.
Donald, recibes a esta mujer como tu esposa para vivir con ella conforme a la ordenanza de Dios en el santo estado de matrimonio. Contesta si la recibes.
Si la recibo.
La amarás, la consolarás, la honrarás y la cuidarás en tiempo de salud y en tiempo de enfermedad, y en riqueza y en pobreza, y serás fiel a ella mientras los dos vivieren. Contesta si lo haré.
Si lo haré. Yo, Donald,
Te recibo a ti, Miriam,
te recibo a ti, Miriam,
como mi legítima esposa,
como mi legítima esposa, conforme
a la santa ordenanza de Dios,
a la santa ordenanza de Dios,
para vivir contigo
desde
hoy en adelante,
desde hoy en adelante,
sea que mejore
sea que mejore
o empeore tu suerte,
o empeore tu suerte,
sea más rica
sea más rica
o más pobre,
o más pobre,
en tiempo de enfermedad
en tiempo de enfermedad
y en tiempo de salud,
y en tiempo de salud,
para amarte y consolarte
para amar y consolarte
hasta que la muerte nos aparte.
hasta que no nos pare.
Y de hacerlo así,
Y de hacerlo así,
empeño mi palabra y fe.
te empeño mi palabra y fe.
No, yo soy la mamá de él. La mamá de mía. Mi hermana.
And the fuzzy image of a man in my head solidified into Donald Jr. 21 años worth of grief y tristeza y angustia washed over me as I just sat on the sofa and cried. Por la primera vez en mi vida. Over Donald. Over a man I never have and never will meet. I'll never get to abrazarle, dance with him, tell him a chiste or a good chisme I've heard around. He'll never get on my nerves, compliment my art, correct my Spanish. Nunca me va a molestar como molestó a Tanya. I'll never meet him. Pero I know him. I know que lloró, que gritó y reía, que le gustaba jugar con sus amigos y primos y hermanos, que hizo bowling, basketball, baseball, that he did BMX biking. I know that he charged Tanya for gas money whenever she wanted to go out with friends, and I know that Papi caught him with weed in his room once. I know all that about him. I know that he was Donald Edward Font. I know que era un hijo, un hermano, un esposo, un amigo, un primo, un sobrino, un nieto, un tío y un papá, que era mi hermano mayor. Y lo extraño. Y I'll be grieving him por el resto de mi vida. Te quiero, Donald. Y te extraño. Espero que todo está bien donde tú estás.
He was a friend of mine, and he could sing a song. His heart and